usurp your vice chairmanship. I didn't realize that I wasn't vice chair. I kept getting the emails and just kind of assumed it.
Yeah, you know, it's.
Yeah, it's true. That is so true.
Yeah, I was the ass end of that one, wasn't I?
Jason, are you going to be? Where are you going to be?
Well, I'm going to be on that end.
Bouncing the hard way, I'm thinking.
I did.
Gravity.
Gravity.
Good idea. It's the law.
It's the law. That is true. Very true. All right. It is 4 p.m., so we are going to call our meeting to order of the Solid Waste Management Authority this January 16th, 2024. Could we please call the roll?
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Commissioner Greeno?
Here.
Commissioner Tompkins?
Here.
Chair and score.
I'm here. Let's all stand, if you would, please, for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready and begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We will open up a time of public comment. Any member of the public can address the Solid Waste Management Authority on any matter on or off the agenda, and each speaker will be allotted 3 minutes to make their comment. Any public comment? Anyone online today? All right. We will close public comment. We'll move into our consent items. We have the minutes from December 19th, 2023, and a budget transfer in the amount of $500. Any public comment on consent? None. Close public comment. Board?
Move to approve consent calendar.
I have a motion and a second. Kara, would you please pull the vote?
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Commissioner Greeno?
Yes.
Commissioner Tompkins?
Yes.
Chair Short? Oh, sorry. Chair
Close.
and score.
Yes. All right. Let's move into director's reports. Mr. Ward.
Thank you, Vice Chair Inscore. Just want to remind everybody that the tree cycling program continues at the Delaware County Transfer Station. You can bring your holiday trees through the end of January for no charge. If you're a Recology customer, you can have them. You can call them at 464-4181 and have them collect that tree again for no charge. Again, please remove stands, and it needs to have not so much flocking that you can't see any green. And please remove all tinsel and ornaments. And this is just for organic trees, not for reusable metal or plastic trees. Lights are okay? No lights. Also, you got to remove those. Thanks for asking. So we're continuing on the Rethinking Recycling program. This week we'll be talking about SB 54. We have a presentation later at this meeting. Regarding the landfill, we have one agenda item we'll be talking about briefly. We've been working with Harshwall and Company on answering questions related to the audit, and I believe the commissioners all received questionnaires in that regard. Regarding collections, Recology still is trying to recover from their malware attack, so their services are still impacted by that, but they are on the road to recovery. We did have a phone meeting with the local agency technical assistant from Cal Recycle, Kathleen Strictly, and since that time, we've now got a different local assistance person. So there continue to be changes at Cal Recycle. Let's see, the other items we will cover under the rest of the board meeting. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Oh, one other thing that's attached is a marine flare fact sheet that's being developed by the California Product Stewardship Council, in part under a grant that we're managing. So less toxic, less hazardous alternatives to projectile marine flares.
All right. Any questions on this portion of the director's report? All right, let's go ahead and move on to the financials, please.
Okay, financials, we have $2.266 million in the bank plus $198,000 for last month's rent. So that's our cash in the bank report. Looking at our accounts receivable, you can see anything over 90 days has been referred to collections. Again, thanks to Kathy Brewer for keeping up to accounts. Looking at claims paid by director, once again, per usual, our largest expenses are for Hambro WSG for the good services they provide at the Del Norte County Transfer Station, to the Del Norte County Auditor for the interfund cost plan, essentially paying for the personnel and auditing services and IT services that we use for the county. And then the other expense that was of significance was the debit and credit machine, which we use because card customers continue to be a significant portion of our customer base at the Del Norte County Transfer Station. Moving on to the monthly cash and charge reports, you can see that this last month in December, we brought in $110,090 for the authorities portions. And comparing that under item 2.5, looking at how our receipts are coming in, you can see that at this point in time, the last 4 months, actually, Recology has had the same franchise fees because they have not yet caught up with their computer issues. But at this point in time, we are $80,629 ahead of budget for this point in the fiscal year. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Any questions on the financials? All right. Do they have any kind of estimate of when they are going to be able to dig out of this IT quagmire?
I don't have any new information from what I shared last time, which was they were bringing it back up to speed and they were gaining more access, but they had not yet completed that process. And I know that it's an ongoing issue because I did receive a complaint call just a couple weeks, last week, from a customer who was frustrated because they had called in to have one of their bulky item collections to Recology. And normally, they receive the call, they type it into their system, and then the driver gets a notice saying they got to collect this up. Without that computer system online, it's all hand records, and it's easy enough to have one of those hand notes not get to the right place. So this person was frustrated because they had called twice for a bulky item collection. It didn't happen, so they decided they were going to become a self-haul customer, which is an option available to everybody here at Del Norte County.
I guess one other question, Director Ward, is how was the amount of $44,088 determined?
It was essentially they kept the franchise fee that was calculated for September and then just kept paying that amount. It's probably an overpayment because the months of October, November, December, and January tend to be lower activity months. So it's probably an overpayment, and we'll make that adjustment once their system is fully back up and running.
Well, then when you say make that adjustment, then we will simply adjust down the difference for whatever month that happens to be.
Right, so we'll receive less money at some point moving forward, once we have a full accounting of what we should have received.
Well, we go back and not to belabor the point, but we've done a lot of our budgeting based on the analysis of year to year. Do you intend to go back then and put placeholders in of what the numbers will we have ability to see that numbers or just the total difference? Do you understand what
Oh,
I'm
well,
saying?
yeah, we will,
Will we be able
I
to see
fully
what it would have been
anticipate
in
we will get
October,
the monthly
November?
numbers when everything becomes reconciled. And I would expect that within the next 2 months.
Okay, good enough. Thank you. All right. Anything else about financials? Then we'll receive and file those. And let's go ahead and we don't have anything okay, we do have the one on the landfill. 3.1 regarding the 5-year permit.
Right. This is a returning item in that previously the board has seen a draft scope of services, and I was under direction to try to pursue this to see if we could access the county's on-call engineering list. And it turns out that it doesn't look like we can. And so we'll have to release our own RFP to procure these services because it needs to be completed by an appropriately qualified engineer, which we don't have on staff. And as we were discussing this overdue 5-year permit review with Huamua of the County Department of Environmental Health, he did point out that we had a similar 5-year permit review coming up for the Del Norte County Transfer Station, and that it made sense to both of us that maybe we should combine the scope of services because both of these need to be completed by similarly qualified engineers that we don't have on staff, so we might as well procure those services once. To try to expedite this, we probably will release the RFP looking for the price for the landfill permit review, because that's the most overdue. And then we will add a change order to use that same contractor to complete the transfer station permit review, hopefully with the same engineering rates. But the attached scope of services has not been adjusted for the dates, and nor has it addressed these additional requirements associated with the transfer station. But staff are looking for board direction to go ahead and make those modifications and release this request for proposals with appropriate public notices, updated with revised dates, with responses due on the 11th of March 2024 so that we can expeditiously complete the 5-year permit review for the Crescent City landfill.
So moved. Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to update the language and the dating for this. One of the suggestions that I might make, Director Ward, is when you redo the RFP and fly it, is as opposed to it having to be solely by change order, is write it as option 1, option 2. Option 1 being only doing the other, and option 2 would be giving you both. Possibly that would stimulate a engineering firm to say, oh, we can get 2. Just a thought. We've done a lot of projects that way where they're tiered things, and I'm just not sure how the change order works if we don't have it written in as a biddable option.
I hear your concern. My concern at this point is I have not drafted the scope of work for the 5-year permit review for the transfer station, and that hasn't been done before. So it's a new piece of work to try to draft that, and I'm concerned that it'll take a few weeks to do so. And I'd rather.
So then is your intention to only fly the RFP for the landfill first?
And to lock in the engineering rates, so that essentially they're bidding on the project so that if we add additional tasks like this additional review, we are still gaining advantage of a set fixed rate.
Yeah, run that by our legal and make sure we get the right language on there so that we don't have to then turn around and put it back out for RFP. That's a great idea.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
understand now. Okay, any public comment? All right, then we have a motion to redo this RFP and put it out for the 5-year review of the landfill. Would you please poll the vote?
Commissioner Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner Greeno,
Yes.
Commissioner Tompkins. Chair and Score.
Yes. Very good. All right, we're going to move down into the items under item 6. We don't have anything for the transfer station or the collections. The first is just an update and discussion on the guiding principles for legislative advocacy. Director Ward.
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair. This is an annual item, and essentially the point of it is that legislation will move through committees, and the time to be most timely in your advocacy is when it's moving through those committees. And so because we meet on a monthly basis, sometimes it isn't possible to confer with the board to make sure that you're agreeing to every last sentence of our advocacy. But there still is advantage in engaging in that process. And so the point of these guiding principles of legislative advocacy is essentially if any piece of legislation looks like it would be a slam dunk to meet these guiding principles, then that's offers the ability for us to engage in advocacy, to have a letter signed either by myself or the chair, and then to bring it back at the next available authority meeting to make sure that we're meeting the guidance of the board. But it does allow us to continue to be effective on hot topics of legislation or regulation that arise between the meetings.
Okay. And are there any updates or changes to the principles from last year?
Thank you for asking. I don't think there are. I looked carefully at the item 8, the control of greenhouse gas emissions and carbon sequestration, because that absolutely interplays with our SB 1383 efforts. And I think that's adequately broad. So I think in general, these are very functional guiding principles.
Okay. I appreciate the skeptical sentence in that, because that, it's a matter of economy of scale when it comes to things like that. And as a rural community, we're never going to have the volume to be able to accomplish the things that might be able to be accomplished in LA County. So thank you for that. All right, anything else on the guiding principles? If not, then we will. Do we annually need to approve these, or do they just remain in place if we don't change them?
It's always helpful to have an approval of the current board, but I'd be equally receptive of any changes that the board would care to make.
Okay. Any public on our guiding principles for legislative advocacy? Seeing none, we'll close the public comment, bring it back to the board for action.
Move to approve.
I have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Kira, would you please pull the vote?
Commissioner Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner Greeno,
Yes.
Commissioner
Yes.
Tompkins, Chair Inscore, sorry.
Yes. All right, gas cylinders, a support position on an SB 560. We're going to take another shot at this.
Yeah, this is a current piece of legislation, and the last piece of legislation that was addressing compressed gas cylinders was passed through the legislature but was vetoed by the governor. And so this is an effort to try to have a broader piece of legislation that hopefully will make it past the governor's desk, but it addresses non-refillable propane cylinders, oxygen cylinders, MAP gas, isobutane cylinders, non-refillable butane cylinders, helium cylinders, and non-refillable refrigerant cylinders. So all of those compressed gas cylinders are largely a problem in our collection and disposal system in that they are fire hazards. There's no real way to completely eliminate some of the flammable gas from some of those containers, and as those materials are picked up and then go through the metal pieces of the packer truck or other as it goes down through the line, anytime you have metal on metal friction, you always have the possibility of crushing one of those containers and having both spark and fuel and heat at the same time, and then you have a fire. So that's our concern, and this is a product stewardship program that would address that concern, and staff recommend advocating that it get passed.
Okay, any questions? I would not have guessed that there was 20,000 thrown away 1 pound containers in Yosemite, but that was dramatic. I thought it was not that, I guess that should be surprising with the millions of people who come through there, but obviously it is a significant issue. So, okay, so we are looking then for a willingness to support and send a sign on
And,
to a letter?
and sign on to the letter that is attached that follows the fact sheet. So you've got the CPSC letterhead and you've got the sign-on letter there.
And the intention of drawing these out of the waste is by which method?
Product stewardship program, so that the company manufacturing them essentially is largely responsible for end-of-life management of those products.
Similar to the mattress program? that
Yes, similar to the battery program, the paint program, the mattress program, the carpet program. Those are all product stewardship programs, yes.
Okay. Any comments? Public comment? Go ahead.
The biggest problem with this one is that, the tenability of getting those out of the waste stream is going to be very problematic. Again, because, most of the manufacturing of these things are not U.S. They're foreign national, products, Chinese, Korean, Malaysian. And the fact that most of these things are designed as disposable, a one-time usage. They're basically, little camp stoves and illegal manufacturing of marijuana. And the reason why we get a lot of these out in our forests, in our areas, constantly, because you're camping, you throw them in the trash. You're not likely gonna, like I say, they're gonna be packing these things back out of your campground areas where you utilize them, and off our beaches, and returning them to some product disposal location. We can't even get them to return batteries, for Christ's sake. So, as much as I agree, it is a hazard, a waste stream hazard, and especially to our services. The reality is having those smaller containers actually being returned for any process is very rare, unfortunately. I applaud the fact that we've got many of these propane tanks now are refillable, reusable, and you can bring them in and exchange them for fuel, for full ones at a relatively reduced cost, which is great. But unfortunately, the basic design of these things is one of non-refillable, completely disposable, and unfortunately, I don't see that being an effective process of trying to get these out of our waste stream, given the nature of their design and purpose is one of disposability, which is unfortunate because that's going to be a real. I think it's just you're swimming upstream with this one. I don't think we're gonna have much of an effect, with a stewardship program on these kinds of designs.
I don't disagree that it is certainly going to be a struggle, but without a process in place, then we don't have anything. So hopefully, at least by putting structures in place that allow for that. But as we all know, you can educate till you're blue in the face, and people don't necessarily do the right thing. One of the areas, and Commissioner Wilson hit on it, that I think that we are making strides is that in line with this is the growth of these refillable smaller propane tanks, because people aren't going to throw away something that they paid more for, right? If we begin to change behavior there, then and we have fewer. But that's the way all of these are. None of these are easy lifts, because
Right.
we're talking about a generational behavior, right? I can still remember when the 1 pound propane tanks all of a sudden became the thing. When I was a kid growing up, we were still using white gas, right? And I remember that this was going to change everything. It's all compressed in this little thing, and it's easy, and and it was. Until it wasn't. So, but yeah,
Well, the hope with this is to create a apparatus where hopefully a certain percentage of the population does
Yeah.
abide by this, and so that will, in essence, take some out of circulation and out of our, hopefully out of our trucks and landfills. So, if we continue to do what we're doing, nothing is ever going to happen.
No. No, you're right.
So,
So even small improvements are improvements. I mean, even if they're small, I mean, that it, you are going to have a percentage of people out there who you give them the right apparatus, right structure, and they're going to choose to do the right thing. And we can,
You got to start somewhere.
and
we're not going to fix it.
I mean,
Dean's right, we're not going to fix
I
it.
agree. You're not going to
'Cause
fix
you're
the
not gonna fix
entire
human
problem.
behavior.
Well, it's not a matter of human behavior, it's a matter of product design. You design these things to be disposable and, non-refillable. And as long as that's done.
Well, that's a great point. If you outlaw the one-off design, then you would change some things. And that is certainly the direction that we're headed with propane, is outlawing those disposable containers. And then we speak to people where people get spoken to in their pocketbooks. It's like, well, I'm not throwing that away. I'm going to go refill it because I don't want to buy another one. So, okay, do we have consensus to sign on to the letter supporting SB 560? Yep. We're good to sign on
I
with
think
the letter?
so, yeah.
Okay.
I'd support it.
All right. We'll go ahead and put that together. If we want to put together our own letter, and you need a signature, I'd be happy to do that, Mr. Ward.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on then to our next item, which is a PowerPoint on another advocacy issue, SB 54, which has been signed into law, and now.
And I'm going to be really quick on this. Well, it's a very complicated and comprehensive law, and we will have plenty of time to talk about that moving forward. So, and we will. So, no need to take too much time of this limited time meeting to do so. I'm trying to get to the beginning. There we are. So, this is discussing SB 54 and talking about fees and funding. So SB 54 essentially establishes that a product stewardship organization will be responsible for single-use packaging, plastic single-use foods serviceware that's sold in California and used in California. And the product responsibility organization is the Circular Action Alliance, and they've already been selected. And their goals are to reduce plastic packaging by 25% by 2032, 60% of single-use packaging by 2032, and by 2032, 100% of packaging in California will be recyclable. So those are the overall objectives, and the producers are responsible for each aspect that you see on this picture. Essentially, online retailers are to use recyclable and shipping packaging. Amazon's one of the partners of the Circular Action Alliance. Consumers can readily identify what's recyclable and what's compostable, and they use those in their collection programs. Those materials are sorted and processed, made into recycled content products, and because the designers are responsible for the organization, they're also modifying their designs to fit into this system. It also pertains to recyclable shipping packaging. So the PRO plan will identify the covered material categories, which CalRecycle has identified, the actions and investments to implement to reach those recycling targets, a source reduction plan, including the plan to phase out and discontinue some non-recyclable or non-compostable material categories, discussions of the technology for collection and processing, and then they're going to propose a fee schedule. The fee schedule is going to essentially be charged to each party purchasing packaging or food serviceware, and included in that fee schedule will be funds to create the California Plastic Pollution Mitigation Fund. to the tune of $500 million per year, 2027 through 2036, which is a whole lot of money. So these funds will also be used to do education and outreach for public participation. And of that California Plastic Pollution Mitigation Fund, 40% or $200 million per year is going to be routed through Fish and Wildlife, the Wildlife Conservation Board, State Coastal Conservancy, the Coastal Commission, the Ocean Protection Council, Parks and Recreation, Natural Resources Agency, and the state EPA, so that about half of that will be used to target disadvantaged, low-income, or rural areas to try to address some of the historical legacy of these plastic products and packages. Additionally, 60% or $300 million per year is going to go through those four agencies: the Strategic Growth Council, EPA, Natural Resources Agency, and the Department of Justice, again, trying to monitor and reduce the historical and current environmental justice and public health impacts of plastics. And 75% of that is supposed to be targeted to low-income or disadvantaged communities. So of that $325 million that's going to low income and disadvantaged communities, there are these definitions of what criteria makes disadvantaged, but the bottom line is that Del Norte County is included in the low income and rural communities under those frameworks. So a good portion of these resources will be available to Del Norte County to address some of these historical issues. In addition, the advisory board in which I serve on is going to be helping CalRecycle identify ways to increase recovery of these covered materials, to decrease leakage of plastic into the environment, to reduce the production of virgin materials for these, so that there's reducing of landfill of those materials, and identifying key barriers and possible pathways forward to having more reusable packaging products and refillable systems. Let's see, going through this. Okay, so looking at the implementation timeline, we're currently on the far left edge of this. You can see the advisory group has been appointed, and the list of covered material categories has been issued, and the CalRecycle has just issued the draft regulations and selected the producer responsibility organization. And so here's the press release identifying Circular Action Alliance as the producer responsibility organization. They also have similar roles in Colorado and Maryland. And then here's a map of the disadvantaged communities that I mentioned before. You can see that there are the Hooper Reservation is up here, and tribal lands are indicated, but most of these areas are in the Central Valley and Southern California. There is a rural exemption process. So our county is categorically exempt, meaning that, but we do need to have the Board of Supervisors adopt a resolution to claim exemption from some of these collection requirements. And then we are to provide a copy of that adopted resolution to CalRecycle within 14 days of its adoption. And then there's also mechanisms by which individual jurisdictions can apply for exemptions, but they have to provide a lot more documentation than our rural areas. So that's the brief whirlwind summary of SB 54, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I have a few. The first is, have you communicated with the county, either through our commissioners or through the county CAO, about the rural exemption, so that ends up on their agenda? That's not something we want to do.
We will want to do that, and I have not yet done that. The regulations were just issued last week, so I've not yet gotten there. But we absolutely will be on top of that.
Okay. My second question is, could you go back in the PowerPoint to the first slide regarding fee schedules, potential fee schedules?
The fee schedules will be set by the PRO, and so...
I just have a question.
Sure.
About the sentence in there that when it talks about participants.
Uh-huh.
Who are the participants?
let's see.
It's hard for me to-
Who are the participants? Uh,
Slide 6.
Slide 6? Oh, okay. There we are.
Yes, it's not selected.
So the individual assessments will be imposed upon producers.
The first sentence, so it describes fees to be paid by participants and how those fees would be collected. Who's defined as the participants? Is this the producer of these things? Because when I read participants, my concern is we're all participating in this. If I buy this and I have it, am I a participant in this process?
The participant is the one selecting the packaging for the product.
Gotcha. Just want to make sure. So, okay, thank you.
And customers do not count. How's that?
Customers always hurt. Okay, thank you, I appreciate it.
Uh-huh.
Any other questions?
I guess I struggle with the idea of throwing money at this problem. They've been throwing money at recycling for years, and it just seems like the system keeps getting smaller and smaller.
Well,
And some
in
of the
this case-
plastics, we even had to remove some of the plastics from being allowed in our recycling just, I think, a few years ago. Because there wasn't a place for it to go. So
And-
just because you speak it into existence doesn't mean it's going to change anything. So I hope that there's going to be some investment in infrastructure for this, because for some of these things, it doesn't exist.
That's absolutely true, sir. And you're absolutely right in that it's just like we had to make the decision about whether or not styrofoam was going to be on a recycling bin. Similarly, the producer responsibility organization is also in exactly that same point. And they're now the ones who are in the driver's seat, because they're collecting the money and faced with the question of, are we going to put this amount of money and as an investment for all of the processing that's necessary and the collection necessary to get all of the styrofoam into one place so that it can actually be recycled? Or do we want to say we're not going to try to do that? Because essentially the state of California under this law is saying everything needs to be recyclable or compostable, and it needs to be really clear to everybody. And so what this law does largely is it calls the question. If you can't recycle that, please stop selling it as packaging and telling everybody it's recyclable. That's more or less what the law is saying. And it's saying to the producers, you the ones who are making those packaging choices, you're going to make sure that those are recyclable or compostable, and it's your job. And if it costs more to do that, that's your bill.
Mm-hmm.
So in some ways, I have high hopes for this system. But it is complicated, it is new, and it is challenging.
And it's expensive.
But the money collected will be collected and administered by the producers. So those of you who are distrustful of government programs, who don't believe that government can run this, you should be happy because producers are running this program.
Well, it never ends up being the producers that pay for it. Let's be honest. The product goes on the shelf, and the extra price tag goes into the amount that you're paying at the store. It's the customers. The bill ends up being the customers at the end.
And as a reality check, for what it's worth, this bill was established because there was going to be a ballot initiative that was going to place a 1 penny per single-use packaging tax.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just going to be a penny per single-use packaging.
Okay.
So that was the level that they said it, we would rather have this bill than that 1 penny parcel tax. So you can imagine then how much money they might try to collect.
Sure. All right.
Well, I guess I'm just old, but, there was a day when our hamburgers were wrapped in a piece of paper, our fries were in a little paper bag, and those two things were also placed in a paper bag. There were times when you went to buy meat, you didn't get it on a styrofoam tray covered with plastic. It was wrapped in butcher paper. And unfortunately, in the state of California, when we are not willing to maybe be as good as stewards with our timber, a renewable resource that grows back, to produce items that are clearly recyclable. I mean, if you make anything out of paper, as long as you don't treat it and add a bunch of chemicals to it, it's one of the easiest things to recycle, or at least compost, if nothing else. And so that's what frustrates me, and I guess that's telling my age, but it's just the fact that in some ways, 50 years ago, we were better stewards than we are today, and I know it's because of money. I know it's, and we've talked about this before, of what do you do with that petroleum byproduct stuff that doesn't end up as fuel, and they're going to find some way to make money of it. Well, they make plastic stuff. So anyway, I want to be hopeful. I do share some concerns, as I shared with you today, that by making it the producer's responsibility, they do have the ability to with pricing, put it back on us, and that's hard. But I don't know of another solution. Not anymore. So. Okay, well, thank you for the update. I'm sure that my biggest concern at this point in time is making sure that we get on the Board of Supervisors a rural exemption, so that some of this nonsense we won't have to deal with on levels that we can't control. Not that we shouldn't be good stewards, and I certainly would like to see us get away from plastics in areas that we know that we could. I don't make any of this stuff. Okay, a concept that is in front of us, just sort of an informational item, as a possible idea of a tool lending library in partnership with the library itself. So, Director Ward.
I'm kind of excited about this idea. Kira and I were at the California Resource Recovery Association conference, and we ran into a friend and colleague, Peter Mui, who's been a tremendous advocate for right to repair and has organized all sorts of repair fairs and things like that. And I was talking to him about my admiration for Berkeley's tool lending library. And I always felt like libraries were the community institution that celebrates reuse in a way that most people can understand and identify with, and how fabulous it was that Berkeley had branched out beyond books and CDs and records into tools and things that people could use around the home. And so started talking to Peter about that, and he and Kira and I were talking about how we might be able to do that without creating a separate building or tool shed or an additional employee. It's like, how could we put together what we have and make that resource available to our community? And so he suggested that we could build upon the trust that the library already has as an institution where people have library cards and they can check stuff out and they're responsible for that, and that you essentially build a capacity within that library card structure where a person comes in and say, all right, I want to be a participant in this tool lending partnership, and I want to make the tools that I have available to other people, and that will give me the ability to check out tools that are available in this catalog. And then when the person looks through the catalog and says, I want a weed whacker in 2 weeks, then the library contacts the person who said they have the weed whacker that they're willing to loan. They deliver that to the hub location. Could be any place that regularly repairs small equipment or rents small equipment, such as Ace Rentals or Curry Equipment, and the person would pick it up. The person delivering it, if it needed a minor repair, we could cover the cost of that repair. The person who picks it up then has a functioning item. They use it, they return it, and then the cycle continues. So we would anticipate some small expense for that, but there would be a benefit to everybody who participates. There's a benefit to the library and that expands the services to their clients. There's a benefit to the authority in that we are able to document a tangible reuse program. There's a benefit to all of the participants because they get access to tools that otherwise they would have to buy or rent perhaps for a higher cost. So, and then the folks who are running the hub get the additional payments for the repair services. So we want to continue the conversation and see if we might be able to find enough partners to put this together. But I didn't want to get too far ahead of the board. If the board doesn't like this idea, then we'll stop working on it. But if you do think it's a good idea, then we'll continue to work on it. And I'd like your advice as to what we should call this thing. Should we call it the Tool Lending Library, the Del Norte Tool Library, or the Tool Reuse Partnership? And I'm open to your advice.
I don't know. When I read this, I was a little skeptical, I have to admit, because it kind of feels like the person who's really benefiting from this is the person who has a bunch of broken down equipment and wants to find a way to get it fixed.
And we're going to put
what's-
limits on that.
What kind of limitations can you put on it to where a person brings in a bunch of tools, we fix it, and then they sell them off on eBay or something, or Crescent City?
I haven't, I'm not sure yet.
That's my difficulty with this, and we'd be footing the bill for that.
And before we finalize any of this, I want to think through exactly those kinds of concerns and bring it back to the board before we get final direction. This is just preliminary direction of, can we have these conversations?
Could be a very good business opportunity for some people with not such great character traits.
And we will be cautious in those regards, and I appreciate the advice.
So, I'm sorry to bring that up. It's what came to mind when I read through it.
Dean?
Yeah, my only concern is, having, our council, make sure that, whatever process we go by, that there are the appropriate waivers.
Yeah.
Especially involved with power tools, because, I've seen some people do some pretty dumb things with power tools, thinking that they can, hey, this is a great way to trim my hedge, right? Have the mower above my head. Yeah, that'll work. Put it on a board and just kind of go back and forth across the top of the hedge. That works out well. Well, anyway, so yeah, that's why we have, stupid stickers all over our power tools, because people have done really dumb things with them. And anytime that you get into loaning out or allowing things to be borrowed, is to make sure that anybody that does borrow them, that there is, if we get into that business of loaning things out, that we have those conditional waivers that basically say anything that you do with this is on you, not on us.
And one more thing, I apologize. Where's the money going to come from? Is there currently a state program or grant opportunity?
There are
that we
several,
can-
actually. We could put together an application right now, but I think it would be wiser to try to gather common concepts with different partners to make sure that we all are
these
agreeing.
bugs out, because we're
Yeah.
not there yet. We're still in the very beginning, and thank you so much, because that hadn't occurred to me, but, having trainings beforehand, having people sign off, release of liability, et cetera, and stuff like that is really important. There's lots of things to work out, though, so.
In the paperwork here, it even talks about a backhoe. So, something like that.
And I'm not sure that would happen,
Equipment
but maybe.
that you really ought to be trained on and certified to use before you use it.
I agree.
So,
Those are things that we've got to work out, though, still. We're just in the beginning.
okay.
It's concept,
Yeah,
still.
and again, that's the other thing that I'd be very, very cognizant of is that within certain confines, I think it's a very viable maybe alternative towards being able to loan out tools. But I think once we get to a certain size of tools and certain types of tools, especially specialty tools, then I think we would be in a in a conflict there with a lot of the local businesses that do engage in that kind of, we definitely don't want to get into that avenue where we are taking business away from other local competitors or other local markets that rent a lot of that specialized equipment, especially when you get into, whether it's cement paving, dryers and other things. I mean, hand tools and those kinds of things are definitely reasonable. I think small appliances or small mowers and that kind of thing are definitely something that would be understandable. But once you get to the backhoe stage, probably would want to stay away from backhoes.
Probably. Some of the things already been said. And I shared this with Director Ward earlier. I am concerned about the liability factor and protecting ourselves if we are a partner in this. That I think that's an important thing. My second thing, which has nothing to do with the viability or even the attractiveness of the program. It is, we have a limited staff, and with limited staff, we have limited time. And I am at least apprehensive about my two key leaders spending a lot of time on a good idea at the expense of trying to keep up with everything that you are mandated to do. And so sometimes there are great ideas that people have, and we'd like to be a part of that. But as a person who has been here a long time and knows how hard you guys have to work just to keep up with the stuff that we are absolutely required and mandated to do, I'm cautious about encouraging you taking on a lot more, because it takes time to come up with stuff like this. So please keep that in mind as you discuss this. If this is going to take an inordinate amount of time away from other things that are mandated, then it may just have to be a good idea that has not found its time. So that's just my input on this.
I appreciate all this advice today.
Okay, so our next item is an item that is this, item 6.5 is the open session item that will be taken action on, dependent on what we do when we go into closed session here in just a moment. So as long as everybody understands that, I'm going to identify what it is and ask if there's any public comment on this item. Since we're going to go into closed session, there'll be opportunity for the public to address it before we actually take action. But we're going to be talking about the director's compensation, vision coverage, along with the director's job description and compensation history since 2014, and the Delaware County appointed department head by weekly salary schedule. And you also have in your packet from the Humboldt Waste Management Authority job description and compensation for comparison. And so we are going to be looking at the director's compensation. He will address us in line with his recent evaluation, and then we will have an opportunity to deliberate and then possibly come back and take action when we return from closed session. For those of you who are here for a city council meeting at 5 p.m., we will not have a closed session meeting at 5 p.m. I shared this with staff that we have a meeting today. So we will have reminded Mr. Weir that this afternoon, and we will be doing our closed session Thank you. We're returning from closed session where we discussed the compensation of the Solid Waste Management Authority Executive Director. And the recommendation, and since I have the paperwork in front of me, I'll make the motion here that we adjust the Solid Waste Management Director's salary in association with a newly created category on the Delaware County Department Head Schedule of A9, with a beginning salary at range A of $3,500 biweekly, which would scale up to range H at $4,924.85 if our math is correct, and I know Human Resources will check that for us. Further, that we, based on his years of service, that we place the Solid Waste Management Authority Director at range H, which is the top of the schedule, and that we will continue to look at the longevity quotient based on the discussions that the County Board of Supervisors is currently undergoing. So I would make that as our motion. Do I have a second?
I will second it.
I have a motion and a second. Any public comment on this item? All right, seeing no public comment, then I'll close public comment, and I'll ask Kira if you would please poll the vote.
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner Tompkins.
Yes.
Chair and Score.
Yes. The other item that was on here in regards to vision was not applicable. It's already been taken care of. So with that, then we are,
Actually, it does need to be approved to have the vision applied to the director.
oh, I thought it was already,
It paid for it, just hasn't been approved.
all right. So I would take a motion then that we approve actually the vision coverage that's already provided.
So moved.
Second.
All right, any public comment? All right, please poll the vote.
Commissioner Greeno,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson.
Yes.
Commissioner Tompkins.
Yes.
Chair and Score.
Yes, very good. We will come to the end of our agenda, and we will stand adjourned until our next regular meeting on February 21st, 2024, right here. Thank you.